or issues for women when seeking health care? Any of your organizations experience with that? What concerns happen at Montner? What services do you offer? How does it happen at Whitman-Walker?
Yeah, so at Montner Project, we directly serve women we focus on women who partner with women, be it lesbian, bisexual, or trans individuals. We will help anyone who is okay with our LGBT status as a lesbian serving organization, but we predominantly serve directly women living with cancer and other life-challenging illnesses. So a lot of what what I deal with on a daily basis with my clients is community and support. I find that a lot of my clients, they have a cancer diagnosis or some other, life-challenging change in their health status, and, the women that they, went to the movies with or they went to the club with, they're not really there for them for whatever reason. Either they don't have the time or they don't really want to be around their sick friend. So some of my clients, they have friends, but they may not feel comfortable calling those friends and say, hey, can you give me a ride, to chemo? Or can you just come sit with me? So that's a lot of what we work with when, we're meeting someone for the first time and they call us. Sometimes they want us to do everything that we can. We have volunteers that give women rides to their treatment and their doctor's appointments. And sometimes, they say, I have no one. And sometimes they say, well, I do. I have a really good support system, a good community, but I don't really want to bother them. So I think that's one of the major issues. It's if you do have a community, how do we, make it okay that you can ask them for help? Because, we understand that that's what community is supposed to be there for. And if you don't have one, where do you find it?
I think Whitman-Walker, we advertise ourselves as a culturally competent center, and I think we also try to train other healthcare providers. Like we do a lot of precepting of students, so that when students come in, we can teach them how to be non-judgmental and how to be culturally competent in serving an LGBT population. So I think people seeking us out come here for that type of comfort. I think that over the years, there's probably a wider range of physicians, physician assistants, practices, nurse practitioners in the city that probably can also offer culturally competent care because of, I feel like, the work that we did here and how we've expanded out. It's sort of interesting that the synagogue that I belong to, Bet Mishpacha, started losing members because some of the other synagogues in the area became LGBT friendly. So then people didn't feel the need to be at the synagogue. So then the synagogue, which actually did lots of outreach to teach other people, started losing members of its own. And so when you talk about space, and I think some of that is cyclical, but I think it's really important. I mean, I think there's still women who are really nervous about coming to see a healthcare practitioner or feel maybe that they're not at risk for certain things because they may not partner with men. And if they only partner with women, they might not realize that they may be at risk for certain things. And I think there are certain things like HPV virus, which can cause cervical cancer. And I'll just mention this quickly, but the new guidelines came out recently. I don't know if you all have seen them, about the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force, which is sort of a controversial organization, has for screening. They now came out with their new guidelines that said, well, basically, if you're 21 years old is when you should start getting your first pap smear, no longer when you just first had sex. But also, women between 21 and 30 only have to have pap smears every 3 years. And women between 30 and 65, and after 65 you don't need to screen anymore, but between 30 and 65 you can have a pap smear every 3 years, or if you get DNA or HPV testing through DNA, you can have a pap smear every 5 years. So they're extending this out because of the basically the efficacy of the testing and the incidence of actually getting cervical cancer and what it's related to. Well, I think a lot of women don't realize that perhaps HPV can be transmitted among women. So there's still a lot of education to be done, and there's also a lot of education about this to providers, because if I go to my doctor, she still thinks you have to do a pap smear every year. And those guidelines kind of changed a long time ago. So there's still a lot of up-to-date stuff that I think we can provide here at this clinic. And I think it's getting women in and getting women of different experiences to feel comfortable coming to a place and recognizing what their risk factors are, what they're not, and being able to come to a place. And I think DC, you're fortunate, but there's certainly places throughout the country where there's still really major issues. Virginia for one, right? There, yeah. So I'll stop there for now. But go ahead.
No, I'm just really excited because I have 65 now to look forward to. I thought all the birthdays were done. On a serious note, I actually think that women in the community need a lot of psychological support, because we do have a big smoker community. We do have at-risk behaviors that I think are more prominent in the lesbian community than are in the at-large community. Overweight, nutrition, that type of thing, exercise, all of those things that I think come from psychologically not feeling good about oneself. And let's be real, 1 in 4 women, statistic, I don't know where it came from or whether it's right or whether it lies, but 1 in 4 women will have depression at some point in their life. I would imagine that lesbians are even more prone to depression as well. So for me, I wonder about the psychological services that we're offering and the support that people are getting, because a lot of times the support that people do have is to go out to a club or to go to drink or to go and people who are around smoking, etc. And that is a culture, and that is something that really concerns me about the lesbian community.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the audience?
I just had a question for Barbara Lewis.
Sure.
It seems to me that the healthcare for women, these standards are getting, like, in terms of testing, they're getting more and more infrequent, like with breast cancer also. And I can sort of understand, I can sort of understand it, but like for colon cancer screening, that's done like every 5 years, and it's because it's not every year because it's very slow growing. But why? It seems like 5 years would be a very long time to go without a pap smear.
Well, I think the reason is because we know that HPV is what causes it. So that if you were to have, you have to have a series of normal tests. And if you had HPV testing and over a 3-year period or your 3 previous pap smears, you never had HPV infection. And HPV also can cause changes in the pathology very slowly. So that if at the age of 50, let's say you never had HPV in your life, you may pick it up because you may still be sexually active, but well, hopefully you're still sexually active when you're 50, and you still may pick it up, but it takes a long time. Women under 30 somehow clear HPV quicker, so that's why women who are younger don't necessarily need HPV testing, and doing more tests actually begets more tests. So we end up being a society of testing that doesn't actually give very large results. And so we end up doing more colposcopies and more colonoscopies. I mean, you talk about cancer screening, I mean, actually colonoscopy is really every 10 years. But so many people get colonoscopies now. It's just incredible. But the yield in terms of positive findings are not that great compared to how many tests we do. So I think that's the thing. And I think looking at, what you're opening up, what can of worms do you open up when you do a test? And then you put, and then you basically submit somebody to another test.
And stress.
And the stress of it. And the stress of it, finding find out you might have HPV, and then you freak out about it.
Almost come back abnormal. If it's a mammogram or a pap smear, then you stress out about that. And there's all the studies, and it ends up being nothing. But you've gone through so much stuff, and then maybe now you're smoking and you're overeating, and it all kind of spirals.
I think that's what it is. I mean, people freaked out over the mammogram, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of us who feel like people were getting so much radiation, getting mammogrammed all the time, getting, that it's like, okay. I mean, I just know, sometimes I would put it off. I wouldn't necessarily go every year. I'd stretch it out to a year and a half because I don't want to go get all that radiation. I mean, there's personal feelings about that kind of thing. So you have to look at the yield, what kind of positive results are being yielded. And also with the new digital mammograms now, which actually are more sensitive. How many times have women had to go back for repeat mammograms because they saw something they didn't see in your old mammogram? And they're like, okay, now we need to do a compression study and a spot and a sonogram and a diagnostic mammogram, and people are getting all these other tests done because we can see more, but it's not necessarily yielding more results. I think that's the thing that we're